education and learning as more males into the field as educational psychologists. There is a raised awareness of the importance of social development and early childhood. Okay. Let's go on to the next one. If you didn't get it all done, it's okay. It will be on Blackboard. What's happening in history, part 1? What are some key events? Pages, first one, 71 through 73. What do you guys have? What are some of the key events happening in history?
Protest and assassination of D.C. 44 miles.
Oh, no, they're going to go first. You guys did 74 and 75. Sharita. They're going to, I had Melissa and Brittany do that first part. Okay, go ahead.
The first thing we had was the progressive education movement.
Okay, very important, especially timeline people. Progressive education movement. We just read in this quote a little bit about the progressives. What do you think that term means, progressive? Did you guys write down what the term means? What does the term progressive in general mean? It's just not just insurance. What does it mean?
Fast pace.
Future thinking.
Future, yeah.
Okay, so it just meant it was a movement that was trying to create educational reforms based on their belief in the good of mankind. You know, it's hard sometimes for us to really kind of grasp this, but really, you know, America itself is bringing new ideas to the world about the fact that people can set their own destiny. Remember, the whole world at this point, like at the late 1700s, we had a hierarchical system where we had peasants, right? And a little bit of history for you. We had the ruling class. And so, how did you pick the outcome for your life? Was it hard work? You were born into it, right? So you were born into a certain status, and that had really far-reaching implications for your whole life. There wasn't this idea that you could kind of self-make your future, right? So because that idea existed, people really had attributed really kind of confused religion, all right, their idea of who God was, and their idea of who they could become. So there was this kind of mix. So people tended to think, well, God put me in this station, all right, so I'm destined to be a serf my whole life, a slave. And I'm just going to be a really, really good slave. That's just how life works. Well, as people started to kind of change, you know, as America gets more powerful and people are having, we're seeing some of the people really kind of rise up from poverty and make big changes, that really caused a lot of people to kind of pay attention and say, you know, people have the power to make their own lives, to have their own outcomes. So that idea was a very progressive idea, and that we shouldn't just educate the wealthy, but that we should educate everyone. That was a really, really radical idea, is that education is for everyone. I'm going to put that down. I don't think that can be emphasized enough how different that idea was. And that because education is for everyone, the opportunity to succeed exists for everyone. And that in itself was a very progressive idea. So if you had a young child who was born to a family in poverty, and you didn't believe that, what kind of education would they need? Not very much, right? They could be sent off to work at a local factory, and many kids were at this point during the Industrial Revolution, right? A lot of kids working in factories, not child labor. But if you really were a progressive, what did you think would needed to happen to that young child born into poverty? needed to send them to school and needed to teach them what?
A better way.
A better way. And there's really this new idea that man is good. That instead of man being evil or his heart being evil, that man is really good. And because of that really radical idea, people are saying we need to respect the inner goodness of each man and give them the opportunity to grow and to succeed. That's progressivism. Okay? All right. So what else?
The nursery movement.
Okay, explain the nursery movement.
Well, it started to flourish in the 1920s,
Okay.
and it encompassed 2 programs. And each program, they each had their own different practices.
Okay. I'm just going to put for the 1920s, it's the beginning of formalized preschool experiences for children. Okay. What else you guys got?
The Harriet Johnson Nursery School.
Okay, tell me about Harriet Johnson. Do we have a date for that?
No,
Okay.
but it was, it became a Big Street school for children
Okay, becomes Bank Street.
from 14 months to 3 years. And it was like kind of like a lab and like demonstration center.
Yep, 14 months, 3 years. So now we've got lab schools. Very important. Okay, what else?
And the Caroline Pratt's Play School. It was another like their experimental school that they learned a lot from.
Okay. Why do we need experimental schools at this point?
We still need them.
Unless they wanted to learn and like create an approach to teaching.
But we have a whole book. We have many, many thousands of books related to child development, right? Do they have these kinds of opportunities?
Yeah.
No. Are these their formal ECE classes or no? None of that exists. So they don't have any form of reference to compare preschool education to. So this is really a radical new kind of approach. All right. Anything else? Okay. All right. Let's go on to the next group. Okay, you guys in the back table. Okay, so what else did you guys find for historical? What else is happening in history on pages 74 and 75?
Protest for the first university curriculum models based on measures of intellectual ability.
Say that again.
Protested assessment of EC curriculum models based on measures of intellectual ability.
Okay, so there is a protest by Bank Street of assessment of children. What does that remind you of? Formal assessment. Bank Street is saying there should not be assessment of children. Why would they say that? Why would they say that we shouldn't formally assess children for intellectual capacity? Go ahead.
I don't know if this is like too off topic or not, but as I was reading chapter 4, I noticed that like they were proving the points that like if you test for, you know, IQ and things like that, of course the direct instruction is going to give you that because that's what they're teaching. But if you're trying to test for, you know, the other areas of development, you can't test for that because it's not something that you can put down on a piece of
Look at
paper.
the psychodynamic theory, right? How do we test whether or not your mother did a good job? How do we test whether or not you're kind to your friends? How do we test whether or not you have a healthy sense of self? So basically they were saying, you know, with this approach, we don't want to test for those things because that's not even what we're interested in. We think if you create a healthy self-esteem and a healthy social sense of socialization, those other pieces will come. But in childhood, like Freud has shown us, we're developing the id, the ego, the superego. That's when we really need to make sure that those social pieces are in place. Can you see why it's so critical to really study this for you guys? Because we emphasize social development so strongly, and now you really begin to see the roots of where that comes from, okay? So we're not going to assess kids on their formal intellectual capacities. That's ridiculous. That's not even what we're after. So there's a big protest movement against that. All right, what else?
In the 1920s, relationship between education, research, functions, and I guess usefulness,
Seen as what?
usefulness.
Okay, yes, there is a growing relationship between research and education. Now, remember, early on when there aren't schools, there's not research, right? There's, you know, one of the challenges that I'm having with writing some of my stuff is that my only research is my experience that I've had with families, I've had with my son. And a lot of people are saying, well, what other research do you have? And my response is, I need time and resources to do the research, but I would be willing to do that. Absolutely. So what we have now established is a very expected relationship. You know, we saw Mitra talking about his hole in the wall. He was talking about experiments, research experiments that colleges and universities regularly do now related to figure stuff out. So that big experiment where he said £1 million, which is like $2 million, where he got $2 million, it was basically to figure out, do we need teachers? So that was his research question, and he was spending a ton of money to kind of figure out this question. So now there's an established relationship between research and education, but back then, that was just beginning. Remember, progressives is just like that quote we read on page 68. They started out with a lot of women just working on their own relationships, their own teacher relationship to child. Yes?
This is something else I know personally, just being in the elementary school, I struggle with because I feel like they've gone too far with the research. Like the kids are constantly being like tested, or the teachers are teaching towards the test or towards the research.
Right.
Where it's not exactly full on research and just open-ended.
It's hard to see that connection anymore. It's really kind of lost because it's gone so the other way. All right, what else do you guys find?
In 1931, the Bureau created a cooperative school for student teachers.
Okay, Bureau, it's actually called the Bureau of Experiments. Isn't that so funny? Experiments creates a
To train them in nursery, primary, and elementary schools.
to train teachers. School to train teachers, yep. And what's cool about that? What's cool about the Bureau of Educational Experiments? Educational Experiments. Where is it at? Come on, where's it at? 1 something Bank Street? And does it still exist today?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, they still have a teacher prep college today. And they are known as one of the greatest institutions of quality. So, very cool. Okay, another one. Give me another one.
The beginning of the 1930s, the outline of the developmental interaction approach had been drawn.
Okay. Okay, so this is, by the 1930s, the BEE starts to write out their approach. It is called developmental interaction. Isn't it something about a name, right? Prior to this, BEE has got this approach, like people know them as being a place of quality, and Bank Street is known as having a place of quality, but they didn't have a name for it. It's just like good nursery school or whatever. There's no formal name. But now they start calling it developmental interaction. They come up with this name. Like for me, Screen Time Detox. I didn't have a name last week, now I've got a name. And it's funny how that name really, it's significant. It's important. It really kind of defines their work. And it shows that they have this very intentional desire to kind of lay out what they think is important about preschool education. All right, what else you got? You guys got anything else?
During the 1960s and 70s, when competitive assessment of curriculum model turned precise program implementation and outcome-based evaluations into focal point, a dynamic conceptualization of teaching and learning became a liability because it impeded rapid dissemination and resisted conventional program evaluations.
Okay, so what